Great. Okay. On to our next speaker, who will hopefully be beaming in to us virtually. So for many of you, he'll need no introduction, but I will. He's a scientist, a best-selling author, an entrepreneur. He was CEO and founder of the machine learning startup Geometric Intelligence, which was acquired by Uber. He's an Emeritus Professor of Psychology and Neuroscience at New York University, and the author of 5 books. Most recently, well, until now, was Rebooting AI with Ernest Davis, which is one of Forbes' 7 must-read books in AI. Joining us to share his unadulterated views on the implausibility that AI will approach human intelligence by the end of 2025. Please give a warm welcome to Professor Gary Marcus.
Hi there.
Hi, Gary. Thank you so much for joining us virtually. I'm going to ask you a few questions, hopefully get you onto topics where you have some strong and unadulterated opinions, as stated in your intro, and hopefully we'll leave a little bit of time we can open up to a couple of questions from the audience, if that sounds good to you.
Sure. Bring them.
So let's start with something that has caught media attention recently, which is a little bet that you made against the prediction that Elon Musk had of exactly what I said in the intro, really, that we'll see artificial intelligence with human-level capabilities by the end of 2025. Now, obviously, it's caught a lot of attention, but could you talk to us about why you said that and what underlies it?
Sure. I'll just clarify. First of all, it's not a bet unless the other side takes it.
That's true.
So I would say that I offered Elon Musk a bet and that his people no commented and didn't take it. The second thing I'll say is not just human level intelligence, but he said that the AI would be smarter than the smartest human being by the end of 2025. And that seems pretty implausible to me. So, I mean, one reason to offer the bet would be to make some easy money, and who would turn that down? And a friend actually raised the bet to $10 million, so it was a lot of money at stake. But the main reason was really about accountability. I think that the field of AI has been warped in a lot of detrimental ways by hype. I hope the acoustics are okay over there. I hear a lot of echo. All good?
Yep. We can hear you, Gary.
So hype has, I think, really distorted the field of AI. It has, for one thing, led to a kind of intellectual monoculture where everybody is focused on large language models, and I don't think that's the real solution. For another thing, I think noble callings like driverless cars, are threatened by overpromising. So if people believe that a car that doesn't require human, that a car that does require human doesn't, then they get into accidents because they're not paying attention to the car. So we wind up with what we call vigilance problems when there are overpromises. I speak it, and I know this will come as a surprise to a lot of people, as someone who actually wants AI to succeed. But I don't think we get there by overpromising. I think what we get by overpromising is an AI winter, where at some point people are like, all of these promises were made, and none of them are realized, or only very few of them are realized. This is never going to work. Let's move on to the next thing. So, people dropped blockchain or whatever, and there might have been some value in there, but it was overpromised and not delivered. I think we were running that risk, in fact, with AI. So we're making it worse because everybody's focusing on the LLMs when we actually need new approaches. So we have this monoculture where we're not focusing on the right thing, and we have this culture of overpromising. So the bet was a way to refocus around that a little bit and to have a conversation about what will we actually need to get to AGI. For that matter, what is it? And we can talk about that. But it was mostly about accountability, about saying, look, if you're going to make these promises to the world, somebody's going to pay attention.
And so it's interesting. So, the kind of the statement is that they're overstating some of these folks that the kind of cutting edge of LLMs are overstating the capabilities or the potential capabilities that will be available in the near term. But at the same time, obviously.
Sorry, can I just insert? And that itself is an understatement, right? So, yes. Sam Altman just gave a talk. I just saw a tweet about it. I wasn't there. I don't know if he mentioned LLMs by name, but he said we need to solve, every disease in the world and go to the moon and blah, blah, blah. And the implicit premise was that LLMs aren't going to get there. So, I mean, that's not just like a mild overstatement. That's so far beyond what we actually know how to do. But we're in a world where he just says that with a straight face and people nod along. So
And so say a little bit more about what you worry as a consequence of that. So we're all going to become over-dependent on it. We're going to have expectations, obviously, that are beyond what is possible in terms of delivery. I mean,
if
what about the
Altman has
dangers?
his way, we're going to spend $7 trillion. He actually apparently asked for that. He had a chance to say, no, I was kidding, and didn't. He asked for $7 trillion to build bigger LLMs. And it looks to me like LLMs are actually reaching a point of diminishing returns. So you could ask, if society invested those $7 trillion in other ways, other AI projects, building infrastructure, et cetera, like where would we be? Would this be a net positive for society? Would it be the best way to invest the resources? And so, like, we're winding up in a world where the best salesmen are getting the most money, but that doesn't mean it's the best technology, or that it's the best outcome for humanity.
Yeah, I did see your Twitter feed, and it was a rather good marketing pitch, I have to say. But I mean, you're known, Gary, for kind of being the squeaky wheel with some of these issues and holding some of these larger figures to account. I know you have a new book coming out called Taming Silicon Valley. Could you tell our audience a little bit about what you're exploring in this new book?
And I don't know if you have the visuals, but I sent you the first copy of the cover. There
We
you
do.
go. This is the world premiere of the cover for lucky people in the audience. So the book is about how Silicon Valley went from kind of don't do evil to let's rip off all the artists as fast as possible so we can make a lot of money. So there's a chapter called The Decline of Silicon Valley. There's a whole section on what kind of regulation we might actually want around AI. And the book ends by saying to the reader, we need you involved. The world needs to get involved here. If we just leave things to the companies and we leave things to the places like the US Congress, nothing is going to get done. A lot of people are going to be exploited. And the technology that's going to come is going to have a lot of drawbacks. There'll be some positives too, and we can talk about that. But I very much worry that if we, the public, don't get involved, that we're going to wind up in a net negative AI world instead of a net positive AI world. And I'd like to see us get to a net positive AI world.
And last time we spoke, Gary, it was at this conference a year ago, and you were talking about the need for a kind of global agency to police AI and perhaps kind of, state-specific ones as well. I mean, how much progress has been made in that direction in the last 365 days? Are you hopeful that there will be some kind of reining in or taming, as you say in your title?
Yeah, I wouldn't use the word policing. I mean, we might need something more moderate than that, but we've actually made a lot of progress. And when I spoke with you a year ago, right after I had given that TED talk on AI governance, global AI governance, I think a lot of people thought I was crazy or a dreamer or something like that. And we've actually made some progress towards there. And the UN, has a preliminary report about how to do that, about how to actually have global AI governance. A lot of countries have come out for it. A bunch of major executives for different corporations have. So I think there's actually been a surprising amount of progress. That still doesn't mean we're going to get where I think we need to go, but it's much more progress than I would have imagined in a year. I mean, there's a lot of open conversation now about how to do something like that. There are hard problems. I mean, ultimately, we might want treaties, global treaties, and those things take, a decade or something like that, and we're not going to solve this overnight. But it's actually, I think, in the interest not only of the public, but of the companies. For example, we don't want to have hundreds of large language models, one for every country, and then multiplied by every company, et cetera, given the enormous environmental impact of all of these things. So, I mean, just training, GPT-5 level models, like imagine every company has to do that in a different way for every country because every country has a different AI policy. Like that's enormous. Horrible environmental impact. So, we actually, even the companies need to have some coordination. And of course, all of us want to protect the rights of artists, writers, creators, and more generally, everybody. I mean, every company nowadays, many companies nowadays have keystroke loggers. It could be that, basically everything that we do is given away for free to companies that then try to replace us. We don't really want to wind up in that kind of world. And so, there has to be some give and take. But I think having some global coordination around this, trying to have an AI that serves the public need and isn't just a way of doing, surveillance like 1984, but in a much more automated way, I think is a really good thing. And we are making some progress towards getting some sense of regulation in place.
And in having these conversations, I mean, there's a lot, right, that kind of bubbles to the surface. We talked about hallucinations at this conference, and you mentioned copyright issues. What is the number one most pressing issue from your perspective when it comes to the potential harms that emerge from generative AI and LLMs specifically?
I think the single biggest immediate term threat is a threat to democracy. So LLMs really don't understand the truth. They don't understand the difference between fact and fiction. They really don't. I gather you've talked about hallucinations. They don't fact check their work. Like, people imagine them to be intelligent beings kind of like you or I, but we know how to fact check things, and we know what passes the sniff test and what sounds insane, and they don't. They don't know what's insane and what's not, what's true and what's false, and that makes them fantastic in combination with their strong suit, which is mimicry, for anybody who wants to make fake news. They're machines for making massive amounts of very plausible fake news, and the systems themselves don't understand that they're being put to that purpose and can't prevent it. And, we have 70 elections around the world. Deepfake technology is getting scary good. So, we can deepfake you or me, make us say whatever we want. It will look good. And then you can use LLMs to write the dialogue and so forth. Like, the tools for mischief are really good right now. Unfortunately, the tools for diagnosing medicine are not as good. So at the moment anyway, I think the negatives probably outweigh the positives. Never seen anybody kind of lay it out on a spreadsheet of our lives, but I don't even know how to put a cost on undermining democracy. And I think that's part of what's at play right now. So that would be number one for my immediate term risk.
That's interesting. I was reading actually in an article recently that I think it was the largest Japanese telecommunications firm was made public their urgent want for the Japanese government to put in place legislation in order to tame AI, saying that it could lead to social order and collapse. And to read that, it seemed rather hysterical. I mean, would you say that's hysterical? Is this about social order collapsing, or is it rather more nuanced than that?
Well, I think the information ecosphere is already collapsing. There's so much garbage made by these systems that people already in 2024 not really trusting anything anymore. And where are we going to be in 2025 or 2026? And the obvious thing to do in light of all the misinformation is to teach people don't trust things. But in the limit, you wind up with what Russia wanted all along, with their fire hose of propaganda model, which is to have a world where nobody trusts anything. And that actually plays into the hands of totalitarianism. I've been thinking about doing a not facetious, a dark humor remake of 1984. I mean, so much in that book is so much more possible now. Altman wants to upload all your emails, all your calendar entries into tools that governments could hack into, or he can sell to targeted advertisers or whatever. We're moving down that road a lot.
Yeah, and most people obviously are completely ignorant to that as well, right? There's a huge education gap. But I should, knowing that I have an audience of probably largely AI optimists, I do want to ask you, Gary, what are you excited about when it comes to AI and the future? You mentioned, the bad probably outweighs the good, which suggests that you have some positive things to say. So, could you let us know where you feel excited and what interesting things you kind of see coming around the corner, if not immediately upon us?
Well, I guess there's two different levels to that. One is in the long term. The reason I've always worked on AI is I do think it could transform the world for the better. So I think it's plausible that some form of AI, although not current AI, could revolutionize medicine, material science, neuroscience. Maybe we could figure out how the brain works, which is what a lot of my work has been about, directly or indirectly. I'm optimistic that if you could take the power of computation with the sophistication and flexibility of the human scientist, we could do amazing things. So I'm very long-term optimistic about AI if we can get past this kind of terrible set of teenage years, and if the technology matures. The other thing that I'm optimistic about is the hype is fading a little bit, and I think that's actually a good thing. The sooner people realize that LLMs are not as good as they're cracked up to be, the sooner people will actually try to explore the space of alternatives. We're in this weird moment in history where the whole field is basically using one tool. And it's a fine tool. It will be in the toolkit that we use to solve AI. But it's only one tool. We need other tools, and we need how to know how to use it with those other tools. We still have some invention to do. We probably need, 5 or 6 more breakthroughs. The sooner we get to those 5 or 6 breakthroughs, the better. And to the extent that people's eyes are opening up and they're saying, yeah, GPT-5 isn't here. Nothing really is better than GPT-4. Maybe, this is all we can do with an internet's worth of data. Maybe we need something else. Like, that might spur new discovery. So I'm at least a little bit optimistic about that.
That's interesting. And I should open it up, actually, for questions. So I'd love to hear what some of the folks in the audience have to say and have to ask you, and now that we've got you. So I'll ask, raise your hand, and we have some roving mics. And hopefully we have some roving mics. Here they come. Just in the second row here, if we could bring a microphone. And if you could stand up as well and maybe say your name and where you're from and ask Professor Marcus a question, that'd be great.
Hello, I'm Nicholas. I am from Ottawa. I'm looking at this camera since that's looking at you.
I see you. Hello, Nicholas.
Last year, at this conference, I actually asked you about AutoGPT. So this year, I'm going to ask you with the previews of Sora that we've seen. I'm not sure if you're familiar with tools like Nightshade that are able to poison the image data that is going into AI generation models for images. I'm just wondering if you have any more thoughts as to how that's going to play out. Thank you.
First of all, I think Sora is not going to have the impact that I think a lot of people do. It will be useful for people making short videos, like music videos and stuff like that, but I don't think it's going to be controllable enough or cheap enough for people to use in things like feature films. Could you contaminate its inputs? Well, you could use something like Nightshade so it won't steal your specific piece of work, but it's likely that they've taken, well, we don't know this for sure, but I would speculate that they've taken most of the videos on YouTube, for example. And I don't think people are going to retroactively poison all those. So it's an interesting thought to think whether YouTube might do that. But already, I'm sure that OpenAI has taken a very large archive that you can't retroactively watermark because or whatever the word is there, because OpenAI already has them. So there will be some countermeasures like that. It remains to be seen how much that is a commercial product. I think we are in an era where people are going to go from text to video, and for short snippets, it'll be really fun. It'll be really great. As a tool for documentaries or especially long-term feature films where directors want an enormous amount of control over every shot, I'm not sure that that's at least anytime soon.
Thanks. Curve our enthusiasm. We should go to this gentleman here, because I know you kept your hand up. Yeah. There we go. Very enthusiastic.
Fantastic. So, hi. I saw you on YouTube, by the way, so I'm actually was really pleased to actually see you here presenting, or all virtually anyway. I'm really curious. You talked about misinformation, and in the long term, that there are some ways to actually just, well, I guess get over the hype, but I'm just curious as to see how would you see us getting past this misinformation risk, because it's such a big issue for all the world right now, and we're not really at a point yet where I see any kind of solutions that are workable really being introduced. And I'm actually asking these questions to everyone here, like how do we get over this misinformation kind of virus?
There are no perfect solutions. There are 3 things I think we can do. We can demand that all AI-generated content be labeled as AI-generated content. I think that's an important start. We can train people, AI literacy, about how the world is changing and the fact that things can't be trusted. We can teach people some techniques about how to recognize the problematic stuff. And ultimately, we need to build better AI than we know how to build right now that can help automatically flag things that are likely AI generated, that are likely misleading. We can do that a little bit now, but we really need better tools to assess whether the things that are said are plausible, whether they're backed by sources, etc. And that's out of the reach of LLMs. They're just not good at understanding truth, facts, reasoning, etc. So that's actually going to require new technology, which may take years to develop. So I think that, the next few years are going to be rough, and there is no magic solution. There are things that we can do, but I don't think we can completely stop the wave that's about to arrive.
Build better AI. Right, I think we have time for one more brief question and probably a brief answer as well. I can see this gentleman in my eye line here, so you get the final one. Please stand up and say who you are if you want to and ask your question.
Hi, I'm Ahmed Mubtaij from CRIM. So my question is, are there any current AI models that are representative of what you consider a net positive future for AI? Maybe specific models like AlphaFold.
I mean, I'm a fan both of AlphaFold and Alpha Geometry, in part because they're neurosymbolic AI, which is something that I've always favored. I'm also a fan of AlphaFold because it's actually doing something useful in biology. It's probably not quite what it's been celebrated to be. One really needs to understand interactions between proteins. It doesn't really help so much with that, but it's still very valuable. So yes, things that are targeted towards specific scientific problems, I think, are much more useful than chatbots that are kind of these general purpose things that are sold as panaceas but not really very reliable. So yeah, I'm a much bigger fan of AlphaFold or Alpha Geometry than I am of the LLMs that are mostly popular these days.
Thank you.
Great question. And that's just about all we have time for. So thank you very much, Gary Marcus. Please give everyone give a big round of applause for Professor Gary Marcus. Thanks so much for being with us, Gary.
Thanks very much for having me.